Hello and welcome to this week's episode of War Eagle Weekly. I'm glad all of you could join me today. As you can see, my co-host Josh is not here with us tonight. I am your host Cameron, and we got a lot to talk about this week, guys. There was an unbelievable amount going on in the world of football, NIL, the transfer portal. We even got some basketball stuff that we're going to talk about because us on this show, we are pretty petty. And for our regular viewers, you will know that we're pretty petty about certain stuff. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We got some outgoing players. We lost some people this week, but really, I don't know if they were that big of a loss from the outside looking in. So our first transfer, Jay Fair. All of us really loved Jay Fair and really liked what he brought to Auburn's offense last year, but he really wasn't too productive. Now, a lot of that probably was the scheme. Towards the end of the year, we started playing more 12 personnel, and so he wasn't on the field as much. But it also, he just, we have some more talented people for that position that we're going to be playing this year. So it makes sense that he is going to be transferring out. Jay Fair had 31 targets. 31 receptions with 324 yards and only 2 touchdowns last year. So again, we're not really losing that much production. In an offense that was pretty stagnant last year, he accounted for quite a bit of our production, but with the talented receivers and pass catchers that we have coming back this year, I don't know if he's going to be really missed all that much in the sense of production wise. Again, Jay Fair is, a fan favorite. He really worked really hard, really got better at his time here on the Plains each and every year. And, all in all, there was quite a few opportunities last year where, fans were calling for him to get more passes thrown his way because he was the only one catching the balls. Peyton Thorne still sometimes wasn't able to get him some of those passes. So, again, it kind of hurts that he's gone, but really production-wise, we're not going to be losing that much. Another outgoing player is Wesley Steiner. It was a highly touted 4-star coming out of high school. But really, while he was here on the Plains, he just never really amounted to much. He always had potential, and he had some physical attributes that were just out of this world. But the problem is we never really turned that into production. He did have some semi-productive years while he's here at Auburn, but last year he only had 15 tackles, and that was it. There was no other stats other than that. Now, sometimes a person's, worth doesn't show up on the stat sheets. So maybe, he had a little bit of that where he was exactly what we needed him to be. He just wasn't the one making the plays, but really from what I saw last year and what I remember, he really wasn't really giving us that production. So I'm kind of the thought that he's really not going to be that big of a miss. Now, obviously, we do want some production at linebacker and some depth at linebacker, and so that does hurt and that does suck. But we have some really talented freshmen and incoming players that I would much rather see on the field just because we don't know what we're going to get. Wesley Steiner, we kind of know what we're going to get, and he's really not going to provide us too much. So we lost him. Outside of that, we had Colton Hood enter the transfer portal. And again, a talented, highly touted player coming out of high school. He was a 3-star, but he was one of those high 3-stars, if I remember, like on the verge of a 4-star. But ever since he got on the Plains, he has been, impressing coaches, impressing other players, and we really were going to be relying on him as a depth piece coming into this year. But again, we're recruiting above him. He's one of those players where he's a casualty of Hugh Freeze and staff coming in and just recruiting the heck out of those star players. And Colton Hood, he probably was always going to be just a depth piece here at Auburn. And so he really only had 3 tackles last year, and that was it. So again, not going to be a huge loss production wise, but it always is bad seeing a young player end up leaving, especially when you really haven't quite seen everything that you think you can get from him. And then we had Tyler Scott, who jumped in at the exact same time. Seemed like it was coordinated, but Tyler Scott is actually going to be coming back. He removed his name from the portal. I don't know what that was. It was kind of weird. You wonder if somebody got in his ear or if he didn't like where he was on the depth chart and then coaches talked to him. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell, but he's coming back. And so instead of 2 young defensive backs, we're only losing 1 in Colton Hood, and Tyler Scott is arguably the better player in the sense that he was a 4-star coming out of high school rather than a 3-star. And so, you think Tyler Scott is going to be a better player when it's all said and done. But we've all seen those 3 stars that ends up being better than 4 stars. NFL's littered with 3 stars. So really, we don't know who is going to be the bigger loss or bigger gain. But all in all, we needed some depth. Zach Blackerby this week talked about Tyler Scott and saying, hey, this is a player that if he wasn't on the team and we brought him in, a 4-star coming out of high school and having all this promise, we would be stoked as a fan base to get him. And so I'm just as happy that he's staying as we would be if we got a player that was just like him. So we know this coaching staff wants him. He wants to be back here at Auburn at least for another year. Hopefully he can contribute this year. Hopefully he can see the field and we can really see what he's made of. That's really all the new additions in the transfer portal for Auburn. And up to this point, the portal closes, I believe, on Tuesday. So when this episode airs, the portal for the spring window is going to be closing. And really, if this is all we lose with, some of the other players that we lost early on, really aren't that bad off. It really seems like this coaching staff does a great job of bringing in players and those players really buying in and not transferring. So I really cannot, I can't be mad at the players that we lost because we've brought in some really talented players to replace them or to, add that depth. So speaking of incoming players, the biggest one that we have as of right now coming in is Keandre Lambert-Smith, KLS. And he is transferring from Penn State. Last year, he had 53 receptions, 673 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was a 4-star coming out of high school, 4-star transfer player. So really, he was arguably the best wide receiver in the transfer portal. Now, again, you can see it all over the place. He kind of is a number 2 wide receiver, not really a number 1 wide receiver. So even though he was the best wide receiver in the transfer portal, he's not necessarily going to be somebody that can really blow you away. But he is a senior. And with the young wide receivers we have coming in, it's nice that we added 2 wide receivers that are seniors in Robert Lewis as well, that are those veteran receivers that have actually produced and done well in Division I football. Yes, we have a couple of receivers that have been around the block and have been in college football a long time, but these two guys, Robert Lewis and KLS, sorry, these two guys are the most productive receivers that we have in the wide receiver room. And honestly, it's probably not even close. You could probably take the stats of everyone else and combine them, and they would not stack up against these two guys, I would imagine. Either that or it'd be very close. So this guy he kind of changes the whole perception of our wide receiver room. That loss of Jay Fair is, a little bit less. He's not going to necessarily be playing that position, although the Penn State Locked On host was talking about how he is a better slot player than he is wide out. So, maybe we'll see him in that position this year, but really Robert Lewis and Steven Jackson are going to be the ones that we see in that slot position this year. And then maybe some of the freshmen as well. But, KLS, he's going to be able to give us that chance to allow Perry Thompson to come in and not necessarily be looked at to produce right away. We all hope and all think that Perry Thompson can surpass KLS as the season goes on, but really, I don't know if that's going to happen. I think KLS is going to be the guy at the number 2 spot for the rest of for the year, and then Perry Thompson will be able to really show us what he's got next year, unless again he comes in and just blows us all away. He was a 5-star for most of the recruiting cycle and only got downgraded to a 4-star whenever he was trying to do too much and kind of forcing plays there in high school. So we'll see what Perry Thompson can do. But either way, no matter what, this is a huge upgrade in the wide receiver room and raises the floor and the ceiling of our wide receiver room. Moving to the other side of the football, we have 3 defensive linemen that came in 36 hours, I think is what it was, all committed. And the first one, Philip Bleedy, he's coming in from Indiana. Last year, he had 30 tackles. He's a 3-star transfer, was a 3-star coming out of high school. So really, he's going to just be one of those guys that's just going to be a solid player that can add a lot of depth to our defensive line and help these younger players really get acclimated to the speed and the college game. So Bleedy, he really started this rash of commitments in the transfer portal. So I think we should be happy that we're getting him, and in any other recruiting cycle, and if he was the only one in the 36 hours, we'd be stoked. But right behind him, we had a player that probably is going to play more and is going to be more impactful, and that is Isaiah Rakes. Isaiah Rakes came from USC. However, he played his entire career at Texas A&M, was only at USC for the spring, and saw what Lincoln Riley had to offer, and was like, all right, I'm out of here. So he's coming in. He was coached by DJ Durkin. DJ Durkin knows him. So all in all, this looks like a match made in heaven and should be a really good fit for the defense that we're running. He's very versatile from what everyone is talking about. He can play many positions along the defensive line, which gives us a lot of depth in a lot of different places. This guy is going to be a huge impact. He's not going to, jump off of the stat sheet, I don't think. He had, 17 tackles, 1 sack, a forced fumble last year. So he's not going to jump off the stat page, but he is going to be that solid player that can really help us along the defensive line. And then the belle of the ball on the defensive side, we have Kieron Crawford, who is from Arkansas State, 6'4", 234 pounds. And this guy just started playing football a couple of years ago. And so he's got a long way to go before he is a fully polished player, but he has a huge upside. This guy is also really, unless he has an unbelievable year, should be a 2-year player for Auburn. Auburn. And even if he does have a stellar year, maybe we can keep him around, but who knows? All in all, he gives us a lot of depth in a position that we needed depth. That we had, why is his name escape me right now? But we have our Buck linebacker, and he transferred in last year from Appalachian State. Just can't remember his name for some reason. It just goes right out the window. So we have our starter, but this guy is going to be able to come in and really help us and should take a lot of pressure off of that second unit. And very well, we could put him, on the other side opposite of our other Buck, and if we really need a good pass rush. He had last year 44 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble returns. So this guy is just going to really have a huge impact on this defensive line room, and at the very least is going to continue to develop and help the younger players adjust to this game. Really, for the transfers, in and out, that's really all we have. There might be a couple more people. There's a couple of players that we're still looking at, so we might have some people come in and we might lose some people. And if so, we'll talk about that next week. But with all these weapons, specifically on the offensive side, we brought in 2 veteran receivers that have produced in Division One. Plus, we got Sean Jackson, whatever his name is, the Cal quarterback that's now at wide receiver. We brought him in. So, and then we have our touted, freeze 4 wide receivers coming out of high school. So this coaching staff has been constantly talking about how, you give Peyton Thorne weapons, then he's going to be able to produce. And granted, he had weapons in 2021 while at Michigan State, and he really, really produced. He had an NFL running back, which he should have a couple of NFL running backs here on this team. He had an NFL wide receiver in Keon Johnson. Yeah. And he got drafted just a couple days ago. So we know that he had talent there, and really with the talent that Hugh Freeze and staff has brought in for him this year specifically, can he revert back to what he was doing at Michigan State in 2021, and can he improve on that? So can he improve on last year? The answer should be yes, 100%. Now, if he doesn't improve on last year's numbers, first off, he's not going to start more than 4 games if he's looking like the player he was last year. I just don't see this coaching staff saying, no, let's go ahead and stick with him and see what happens and see if we can get him better. I would imagine he has a fairly short leash. It's probably going to be longer than some fans. I might be one of those. But at the same time, again, he is the most veteran quarterback that we have in the room. But it's not that hard to improve on last year's offensive numbers. They were abysmal. And so we have a lot more talent in this offensive room. Not just at wide receiver, but we have our running backs are going to see an improvement because they've been in, training for the entire year. We brought in some really good transfer linemen. We have some linemen that are going to, again, improve. And everyone talked about how too tall it was this year that they were expecting him to contribute. And he blew everyone away last year and got to start. So we have talent that's going to be around Peyton Thorne. And if anybody's expecting any other quarterback to start outside of Peyton Thorne this season, I think you're just kidding yourself. And so he should improve on this year's offense, especially with Hugh Freeze having a more hands-on approach. There being a lot more synergy in the offensive rooms on the coaching staff. And, scheme-wise, player-wise, again, there is no no excuse for Peyton Thorne to have a similar year to last year. He should improve and should be operating this offense at a much better pace this year than he was last year. And so if he doesn't, we're in trouble. If he doesn't, we're going to have a long year. And it's going to be a long, long year. Because I don't think any other quarterback is ready to really step in and produce the way we need him to produce to give this team a fighting chance at 9 wins. Because really, yeah, of course we want to win more than 9 games, but 9 seems to be the ceiling for this team. Get a couple of breaks, fall our way. Peyton Thorne plays like a top half quarterback in the league. So, he has to be a top 7 quarterback, and this team can really, they can win 9 games. So the biggest question is still not just the offense, but the defense. So we added a lot of players on the defensive side, not just in the last week, but also over the course of the entire transfer portal. We have added a lot of defensive backs to replenish the ones that got drafted and the ones that signed on as rookie free agents for the NFL, and a couple of those defensive backs that have transferred. So we've really refilled the coffers on the defensive side. But we also lost a couple of people that we probably would have preferred to stay. So with those additions and subtractions, what is the floor of this defense and what is the ceiling of this defense? I'm going to rattle off a couple of stats here for the defense. They were number 7 in team defense last year in the SEC, so that puts them right at halfway. And that's not too bad. Our defense probably surprised us a couple of times last year and really put in some really good games for us. They allowed 22.62 points per game, 155 yards rushing, 4.4 yards per average, 15 touchdowns on the ground, and allowed 202 passing yards on 19 touchdowns. Now, the rushing defense, we got to get better. 155 yards. In today's college football, it's really not a lot of yards, but it still feels like a lot. So 155 yards, let's cut that down. And but the passing yards, 202 yards passing a game, that's pretty damn good. And I really can't argue with the production that we got from our defensive backs in passing defense. And so I would have to say that with these additions, with these players that we've added and the few players that we've lost, the defense, the floor is got to be the same as last year. Middle of the pack in the SEC, being able to hold teams to less than 23 points a game. I feel like that is the floor. And if we can have our defense produce at those numbers, we really should have a good team for the most part. We need our offense to do some more production, obviously, but I think, again, those are good numbers, and that as a floor should be amazing. The ceiling for this defense, though, you got one more year of players that have been in this, have played together. We have Austin Keys, who should play with us the entire year. Asante should be playing the whole year. We have a lot of impact players that are not going to be freshmen on the defensive side, or should I say starters, whereas last year we had to start a few freshmen. And I think we should get some more production from the defensive line with the additions that we've made in the transfer portal this year. So the ceiling for this team, I think we can be a top 5 defense in the SEC. But again, that's the ceiling. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case, but I think our defense can surprise some people this year, especially in the production. I think DJ Durkin is a great coach. I think he's going to put them in the best position to succeed. Our rushing defense should definitely be better under Durkin. And again, there's just so much talent in the defensive back room that it's hard to imagine there being a big drop off there. So really excited for what this defense and really what this team can give us this year. Moving on, there was some really big news in the way of NIL this year or this week. I'm just going to read off some information that I wrote down. Starting August 1st, schools can now facilitate NIL deals for athletes to third parties. The schools can act as brokers but cannot pay the athletes directly. This only applies for athletes that disclose their NIL arrangements. Athletes are not obligated to accept assistance from the school and must maintain authority over the terms in their NIL agreements. So again, the school is just acting as a brokerage. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of collectives kind of merge into schools, but some of those rules and some of the, wording in the new rule, it probably would be best if the collective stays separate from the schools. They might be working a lot closer together, but these collectives, again, they are able to pay some NIL money to these athletes. And so that's why they would need to stay removed from the school. But the school is going to be able to work with them and those teams out there and those fan bases out there that have really good collectives. I would imagine it's just going to make everything better because the team, the coaches, the school, they're all going to be able to facilitate and help with hooking up some third party, stuff going on. Like, for instance, the first thing that came to mind was Oregon and Nike. I don't know how many of their players have Nike NIL deals, but I don't know if there was, some rules to where you can, you can't really sign on with the school's, apparel provider. I don't know what those rules are, but they were the first school that kind of came to mind because Oregon and Nike are synonymous with each other because of Phil Knight going there, and it's widely, everyone knows that Nike has a big input on the athletic program there in Oregon. So this is a huge step towards the NCAA really embracing NIL and really trying to get a better handle on it. Because it was the wild, wild west for the longest time, and now it's getting a little bit more reeled in, dialed in, getting a little bit more accurate in the way that it should be handled. So this should help a lot of athletes really get involved with some sponsors to really make some good money. I am one of those people that have for decades, I have been saying, they should be able to use their name, image, and likeness to make money on their own. If they want to, show up to a car dealership and be the face of that dealership, they should be able to. We're here in Salt Lake City and Utah, and there are Karl Malone dealerships all over the place. And so why can't college athletes do the same thing? It doesn't make any sense. So very happy that these NIL rules are coming along. Some of the stuff that's happening with it, I'm not a huge fan, but for the most part, I'm all about these kids making money, especially when the schools are making as much money as they are. So now, speaking of the schools and speaking of the conferences, we got some other big news about the SEC and Big Ten. They were entertaining the idea of leaving the NCAA. Now, Greg Sankey kind of walked back that, thought process and said, no, that's not really what it was. But when you read some of this stuff that they were talking about, you kind of feel like they were, excuse the language, but they were kind of, waving their big dick around and was saying, hey, you got to listen to us. And if not, there's going to be repercussions. And so, yeah, they maybe didn't come out and say, oh, we're going to leave if you don't do what we want you to do. But at the same time, they kind of implied it at the very least. And so that poses the question, do these two conferences have too much power? So some of the information coming out was that when they were trying to determine the college football playoff, the expanded playoff, the SEC and Big Ten were trying to get 4 automatic bids, which is ridiculous. We got 3, so they settled for 3, I guess, but 4 would have been unbelievable. Greg Sankey said Wednesday on the Paul Feinbaum show that the new strategic partnership between his conference and the Big Ten is a response to a need for leadership that can introduce some new perspective, new ideas, some new thinking, or maybe even more important, help cut through the bureaucratic tape we face so often in college athletics. But said the relationship is not intended to circumvent the NCAA. Again, they implied it, but it was not meant to actually circumvent them. For somebody that has been saying, the NCAA should let athletes make money themselves and shouldn't be, having all these rules that prohibit athletes from being more along the professional side of things. I kind of like the idea, the way that Greg Sankey worded that is to cut through the bureaucratic tape. Because we've all seen it. The NCAA is just archaic in their rules, archaic in their thinking. But at the same time, if you're a part of an organization like the NCAA, when you have 2 entities that have this much power, it kind of ruins it for all the other people involved. A super league being created between these 2 conferences, I think we would, as SEC fans and as Big Ten fans, I think we would get 90%, 80 to 90% of what we already have. But at the same time, we're losing some of the other things that come along with the NCAA. Like, for instance, are we going to be able to participate in March Madness on the basketball side? So that's kind of a big deal. And so I don't want to see them create this super league. Holding the NCAA more accountable, yeah, I do want to see that. Helping them, get their feet and legs out of quicksand because they were just standing still for decades. For decades, they were just standing still. So yeah, that idea I'm all for. But at the same time, again, when they have this much power, it's kind of like, everyone else is just going to have to fall in line, because what else can we do? If we don't fall in line with them, then we're going to lose all this other money. We're going to lose, a lot of the fan base. They're going to lose power themselves. And so it becomes an issue of just, man, again, they might have the best interest of the NCAA and of all of college athletics, but ultimately these 2 conferences, they care about their conference staying relevant. And so they're going to only do what's best for them, whereas the NCAA tends to do what's best for everyone, and they have everyone in mind. They don't have an agenda to get one conference better than the other. They don't have that agenda. And so the more input these mega conferences like the Big Ten and Big 12, Big Ten and SEC have, it could hurt the whole organization as time goes on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Moving away from football and the NCAA in general, this is the petty part of the episode. Hopefully our editor just puts in big letters all around me, or flashing lights, pettiness, because that's what this next segment is. We're going to talk about Aiden Holloway and him transferring. That's not the petty part. He can transfer. I want that young man to be successful. Good for you. You go out, you find somebody that can help you get where you want to be, and if you feel like you're going to be more productive somewhere else, go for it, man. College basketball has been transferring players like crazy for a decade now. This isn't new. The transfer portal is not new in college basketball. So go ahead, you do you, man. But for you to take a shot at our coach, this is where we're getting petty. This is the part where I'm just like, okay, F you. And not only that, but he's also going to Alabama. Okay, transfer anywhere but Alabama. And you know what? Yeah, if Auburn was getting an Alabama player, I'd be, if they can help us win, I'm all for it. And so when you're on the receiving side of this rivalry, okay, yeah, you're happy, you're okay with it. It's not going to bother you. So that part sucked. And that part was it kind of stung. And I was just like, I'm pissed because he wants to go to Alabama to prove something, to go against Auburn, to be a rival of Auburn. So I was a little upset. But for him to say what he said about Bruce Pearl, I'm going to read you this quote, okay? And you make a decision on whether or not he was being petty. At Auburn, I kind of got sold a dream by my coach, Bruce Pearl. The season started out good for me, individually and as a team. Then he kind of went in a different direction with the offense. Okay. He got sold a dream? Yeah, okay, well that's what coach is supposed to do. But you know what? It's not the coach's fault that you did not produce. Okay? He kept running you out there. Trey Donaldson is playing in Michigan next year because we moved him to the bench to give you, Aiden Holloway, 22 minutes a game when you were doing jack diddly squat offensively for this team. No, you didn't turn the ball away. Good for you. Don't turn the ball over. Okay? That's what you're supposed to do. So good for you in that sense. But you're a scoring point guard who, again, like you said, that first game of the year, you killed it. You nailed it. You got us tons of points against Indiana. You did good. But after that, you didn't do anything. You averaged less than 3 points a game for the entire season. And you didn't help us on the assist side of things either. Okay? So coach kept running you out there, giving you tons of opportunity. And what do whenever you leave? You go and take a shot at him and say that it was him was the problem, that he went in a different direction. Okay, well, he didn't tell you to stop shooting. Okay, I don't have any inside information. I'm not breaking any news here. But knowing what we know about Coach Pearl, he does not tell his team, his players, you got to stop shooting. That is not what he does. He's going to tell you to shoot the ball. And he gives you the green light. Everyone always talks about that. Always talks about how they're going to that Bruce gives them the green light to be themselves. And Aiden Holloway just could not get shots to fall. Okay? You took great shots. Very rarely did we look at that shot and say, ooh, he shouldn't have taken that shot. Happened a couple times. You're a young player. It happens. Most of the time you took good shots. They just weren't falling. Okay? So don't go and blame coach for a bill of goods that you were sold or a dream. Well, what did he say? Yeah, a dream that you were sold by coach. This is not on Coach Pearl. Okay? Coach Pearl gave you nothing but respect. And I can tell you this right now. Go back and watch some of our past videos, okay? There was a moment in the Florida game that I told my brother, I said, I think he's checked out. I think he's checked out. He got pulled in the Florida game, and Bruce Pearl was off looking over this way and saying something, and was in Aiden Holloway's like right here. And he's yelling, but he's not looking at Aiden Holloway. He kind of knows, hey, I'm not going to stare at this guy. I'm not going to be in his face, but he knows I'm talking about him. And Aiden's face just looked like he did not care. Did not care. It didn't look like he became a problem on the team. for the rest of the season. So I appreciate that, Aiden. I appreciate you keeping your cool the rest of the year. But it was that Florida game that really changed for him. I think at that point, that was when he really decided he wanted to transfer out. And that's just me assuming. That's just me taking a guess. That's just a theory. But that's when it was. Don't take a shot at Bruce Pearl, okay? Because you're not going to win any favors. If you want to perpetuate the rivalry between Auburn and Alabama and add more fuel to that fire, okay, you just did it by taking a shot at our coach, the guy that has brought Auburn basketball to the forefront of every college basketball fan out there in this country, okay? You're not gonna win over any fans by taking a shot at our coach, okay? So shut your mouth, play basketball, and now that you're at Alabama, you keep doing what you did while you're here at Auburn, okay? I don't want you to succeed, okay? I want you to fail now, especially now that you took shots. So, staying with the theme of pettiness, okay, we're going to talk about Alabama some more, all right? I know this is an Auburn podcast, but let's be a little bit more petty on our way out the door. For those of you that watched the NFL draft this year, okay, night one, we got stuck with Nick Saban up there on the desk there at ESPN. Okay, yeah, he's the biggest name in college football, even still, you know. Okay, I get it. But Nick Saban talking about one of the players that was drafted, Quinyon Mitchell. He's a cornerback out of Toledo. Okay, yeah. He said he was our number one guy in the portal last year. To try to get him to come out of the portal, and he would never get in the portal. Let me read that again. To get him to come out of the portal, and he would never get in the portal. Again, folks, he never entered the portal. So why is Nick Saban saying he was our number one target, and we were trying to get him to get in the portal, to get out of the portal and come to Alabama? That's kind of big news there. That's kind of big news. It just goes to prove what every Auburn fan has been saying about Nick Saban's tenure there at Alabama this whole time. His proteges, Jeremy Pruitt's of the world, they got caught. They got caught trying to buy players. They got caught trying to cheat. Nick Saban is just really good at it. He's a lot better at it. But now that he's retired, he doesn't care at all, obviously, because now he's dropping dimes like that saying, hey, we were tampering with the player. If you're one of these teams out there and you get your players poached by another team that enticed your player to enter the portal, that's just wrong. And I pray each and every day that Auburn is not doing that same thing. If that's what it takes to win, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to break the rules so much that I'm going and calling up another player saying, hey, we got a spot for you. If you go ahead and enter the portal, we'd love to have you on our team. I don't like it. It's not right. Don't try to steal from these smaller schools in that way. If these players enter the portal on their own free volition, then so be it. Fair game. But to go in and try to entice them to leave, it's not cool at all, man. It's not cool at all. And the thing is, NCAA, because they're a shell of themselves, we just got done talking about how the SEC and Big Ten have so much more power over the NCAA now. Are they going to investigate Alabama? No. Are they going to investigate Nick Saban? No. Are they going to remove wins away from Nick Saban's record? No. They're not going to do that. They're not going to make any waves because everyone hates them for what they did with NIL, for the lack of NIL, and then for them to just, whatever, guys, go ahead and do whatever you want. So the NCAA is not going to make any waves. They're not going to make any big splashes. They're not going to investigate this. This is going to get swept under the rug, and in a couple years, everyone's going to forget that Nick Saban even said that. Not me. Not Auburn fans. I can promise you that. But everybody else will. And it's not right. It's just not right. Especially, and we talked about it two episodes ago. We talked about Cam Newton and what the NCAA did to him and his family, to his dad. They'll do it to other schools, but they're not going to do it to precious Alabama. And they're not going to do it to precious Nick Saban. It's not right, but they're not going to do it. Now, I'm done with my petty talk. I'm done with, these players that are from Alabama, go to the University of Alabama, people that coached at Alabama. I'm done. I'm going to get off of that rant. Okay? And to the people that have stuck with me, I appreciate you coming along on this ride with us. Okay? I appreciate everything that you viewers are doing. I want you to like. I want you to subscribe. I want you to hit that notification bell. Leave a comment below. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to know what you think we should be talking about. Okay? Help us to improve. All right? And until then, War Eagle. War Eagle to all of you out there. Have a good one.